Good morning. It's kind of cold and raw out this morning, a little bit clear. It's finally stopped raining. The track of the day is deer. It looks like a deer has been through here in the last few hours. The project of the day was, I was going to tell you the story of the rest of the story about workplace fires. So one afternoon, I think it was afternoon and it was summertime, the place where I was working had it was basically a 3-story mixer, and there's a story above that to house the handling equipment, and there's a basement. So above absolute ground level is probably 6 stories, and above the top story was a bag house. And the idea was that it was a big dust collector. And so what happened one afternoon was that thing caught fire. And of course the fire alarms all sounded. They had to shut down the mixing equipment. And what then happened was we of course all went out on the roof to see what the story was, instead of going the opposite direction, which is probably what was called for in the standard operating procedure. So what happened then was this thing had burned for a while, and somebody made the determination that it was being fanned by the fact that the dust collector was still on. So in other words, dust collector catches fire, air is still being sucked into the mechanism, and this bag house is probably 10 foot tall and had a normal sized door in it. So they ended up asked for volunteer, which of course volunteers to do something crazy were fairly easy to come by in those days. And they basically hosed this fellow down as he approached the bag house, opened the door of it, and shut off the fan so that the air would quit being circulated into it. And of course he was a hero, and of course after that, all that stuff was over, the thing was shut down. The fire went out more or less immediately, plus they had fire hoses on it. And by they, I mean the rest of the maintenance department, because the fire department never got called on anything. So what then happened was, the guy just kind of laughed about it, lit up a cigarette on the roof at the fire scene, and everybody just kind of laughed about it because he was soaked down. So that was what the place was. Among the other things that happened, no evacuation. The idiotic engineering that says that you had to actually enter the bag house in order to shut it down, instead of the switch being on the outside of it somehow. Smoking on the job site, no reporting to the fire department. This was in the days OSHA existed at that point, but it wasn't widespread in industry like it is now. So that was the story. And so then, I guess the point of all this, the reason I'm telling you all this, not in addition to the idea that life is cheap, but the idea is that that whole place wasn't engineered properly, and it wasn't thought out properly what to do in a situation like that. And the exact same thing happened from the standpoint of quality. That is to say, they were so production oriented and they were so do or die oriented that their whole attitude toward everything was basically tuned into the idea of production being the most important thing. It's a human. So anyway, that's the story. The point is that nothing happens in isolation. The attitude that pervades is production. You're going to prioritize production over safety or quality. And that was the way things are. And that was the way things were in those days. And of course the company, a couple of years after that, went bankrupt, had to be bought out by a competitor, etc., etc. And you can hear the whole story, or not hear the whole story, but read the whole story in my book, The Why People Still Don't Do Their Jobs, which is available on Amazon, so feel free to do that. I'll be back with you at push-up time. It looks like we missed the wildlife today. Don't see any deer. I thought we would see some deer this morning since it's chilly. All right, later. Step count is 7,300. Push-up time.